Good morning and good afternoon, and welcome to this video on the water cycle. This video focuses on changes that water undergoes as it travels through the water cycle. Now, the information contained in this video comes from Sea Palms Resources, so this material that I'm recording is not my own. What is the water cycle? The water cycle is the process of water changing and traveling on Earth. It involves heating and cooling as it changes between different states of mass. Again, it's the heating and cooling of water as it changes between different states of matter. There are three main changes in the evaporation cycle. Those include evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. Because it is a cycle, there is no beginning or end. There is no debate on which came first, like the chicken or the egg. These changes are happening all the time, all over the world, and the oceans are a crucial part of the process. Let's consider for a moment evaporation. Now, evaporation in the water cycle happens when the surface of liquid water is heated and turns into a gas called water vapor. Often, this process is hard to see. When small puddles of water evaporate, it may look like the water is just disappearing over time, but what's actually happening is one of two things: evaporation, or if the puddle is in ground, there's actually some absorption occurring as well. As long as it keeps enough heat energy, the water vapor will stay in the air as a gas. Now, if the water vapor has enough heat energy, it will rise high and higher into the air. The water cycle process of evaporation can happen anytime the surface of the water is heated by sunlight. During the evaporation process, the surface of the liquid water is heated and turned to a gas called water vapor. Evaporation doesn't only happen on the surface of a lake or an ocean. Soils that contain water also release water into the air. Have you ever noticed how dry a soil can get after a few sunny days without water or without dew or condensation? The process of evaporation and boiling both involve heating and heat to a liquid and change it into the gas. But evaporation happens on the surface of the liquid, while boiling happens throughout the liquid. Now let's cover another part of the cycle: condensation. In the water cycle, when water vapor cools and forms clouds, this is called condensation. When the water vapor loses heat energy, it turns back into a liquid. Even though clouds often look fluffy and soft, like cotton, they are made of many small drops of water. Different types of clouds contain different amounts of water. If they are high enough where the temperature is very cold, some of the water in the clouds can turn into ice. Inside clouds during thunderstorms, air is moving up and down very quickly. The movement creates an electronic or electric charge, like almost as if you are shuffling your feet on the carpet while wearing socks. When enough charge is built up, it releases energy called lightning. Again, the water cycle process of condensation involves water vapor turning into liquid water, or sometimes ice crystals, and results in the formation of clouds. Clouds are formed when enough water vapor in the air cools and attaches to particles of dust. The atmosphere around the clouds contain as much water as, well, it can hold. While it's hard to see condensation happening in the sky, you could see it in your own home. Have you ever noticed after a hot shower, the bathroom mirror is fogged up? Well, that is because the water vapor from the hot shower cools on the glass and it changes back into a liquid. You can also see that happening in around a cup of, say, ice water or ice liquid. If you have a cup of ice water around the house, it starts to sweat. Why? Because the temperature around the glass or on the glass itself is able to change the air around it to a cooler air, which doesn't hold as much water. Therefore, it produces condensation. Sometimes when you look up at the sky, you can see clouds that look really high and thin. These are called cirrus clouds because they are high up in the sky, and they are often made of ice crystals, not liquid water. Our next topic is precipitation. In the water cycle, precipitation happens when clouds release the liquid or solid water and gravity pulls it towards the ground. The type of precipitation that falls depends on the type of cloud it comes from and the weather conditions nearby. There are four main types of precipitation here on Earth. You have rain, which is droplets of liquid water, snow, solid water with tiny crystals, sleet, which is tiny solid water droplets typically formed in cold weather, and of course, hail. Hail are round balls with solid water, and they can be large or small, and usually formed in warm weather. On July 23rd, 2010, a hailstone fell during a storm in South Dakota. That stone was 20 centimeters in diameter. 20 centimeters in diameter equates to about 7.9 inches and had a mass of almost 1 kilogram or 2.2 pounds. Again, the water cycle process of precipitation brings water back down to the surface of the earth in different forms. If it rains on a surface that cannot absorb it quickly, like concrete, it can create flooding. City planners must think about where the water will go when it rains to prevent floods. Think of it kind of like this. Different areas don't receive as much rain. Often during heavy rain, you will see flooding in areas, say, like Las Vegas, Nevada, which is in the middle of the desert because their building design usually doesn't need to accommodate for rain. We get a lot of rain here in Florida, and while it may seem like a lot and there might be some minor street flooding, our systems are really designed to take advantage and reroute the water. When the temperatures are low enough, the water in the clouds can freeze into a solid that we call snow. Each snowflake is unique because of the unique patterns of ice crystals. Now, when sleet falls from the sky, it can be very dangerous to drive on the street because sleet makes it hard to see the roads and can make the roads very slippery. Hail comes when rain begins to fall through a storm cloud. This often starts when a particle of rain is lifted high up in the air by rising warm air and high enough where it freezes. When it freezes, it turns to hail, and then it falls again, and then bumps into different portions and particles of water that can freeze. Now, sometimes this happens multiple times and cycles over and over again till the atmosphere can no longer hold up the hail and it falls to the ground as a ball of ice. Let's take a look at the oceans. Earth is a very special planet in our solar system because the surface is largely covered by water. In the water cycle, the ocean plays an important part. As the sun's energy reaches Earth, it heats up the water on the Earth and in the Earth's atmosphere. Much of that water, well, is in the ocean. Water on the surface of the ocean can evaporate and rise into the air, where it can eventually form clouds through condensation. If those clouds produce enough precipitation, some of it may fall directly back into the ocean. Some of it may fall into land, where it can eventually make its way back to the ocean as well. Because so much of our planet is covered by the oceans, About 86% of all evaporation happens there. This also means that almost 80% of precipitation falls right back into the ocean. About 71% of our planet's surface is covered in liquid water. The water cycle describes how the water moves and changes over time. Earth has a lot of water, and most of it can be found in our ocean. That means most of the water that drives the water cycle spends time in the ocean at some point. Observing the water cycle across the globe shows just how much involved the ocean is. Evaporated water condenses into clouds, then forms precipitation. Again, because this is a lesson for school, let's go ahead and cover some basic vocabulary here. We have heat energy, the energy of particles moving inside of an object. Usually the measurement we associate with heat energy is temperature. We got water vapor, which is the water in its gaseous state, or the gas state of matter, and of course, cycle, the process that things are repeated in. It has no beginning or has no end. Since this video is intended for a STEM class, let's go ahead and look at some of the things that have been created, or science and technology and engineering in action, being applied to certain portions of the water cycle. You may not consider the tires on your car to be technology, but a lot of science and engineering goes into the design and designing of the best tire, especially for snowy, icy, or wet roads and wet conditions. The tread, or the pattern on the ridges on the tire, help it to hold to the road even when things are slippery. The material that the tire is made of can help it stay strong and flexible when it's cold. Without the right tires, driving on the snow or the rain can be dangerous, especially with old tires that have become hard over time. Even though the water cycle never stops, we know it doesn't rain every day. Some people use rain barrels to catch the rain as it falls from the clouds or off of a roof. The barrels store the rainwater. Then on days where it's not raining, the water can be taken from the barrel and used on plants, to wash cars, or for different other uses. This simple solution helps conserve water that would otherwise need to come from other sources. Without meaning to, actions of humans, such as building over natural lands or creating pollution, sometimes affects the water cycle. But humans have also tried to intentionally affect the water cycle with a method called cloud seeding. Cloud seeding tries to control when and where clouds will form precipitation. A chemical is released into the clouds that attaches to the water droplets and makes the water droplets fall. The chemical is not dangerous. However, scientists aren't sure if the process of cloud seeding is safe or even if it works, because it's too hard to know what cloud would have been done without it. When large storms like hurricanes are headed into the area, it's good to have as much information as possible about the atmosphere in and around the storm. Large planes called hurricane hunters fly over and through the storm to get a better idea of what type of weather may be coming or is around the storm. Using this information, people can plan for large amounts of rain or even hail. How about this idea? Ever wondered how much rain fell at your house? If it's safe, just as it begins to rain, put a clear plastic container, like a cup or a bucket, outside in the open on flat ground, away from trees, of course. Keep it there until it stops raining. Use a ruler to measure how many inches of rain fell. Dump the water out and repeat that process each time it rains using the same container. See if the amount of rain was the same each different rain event. Now here's the catch. The rain container should not be cone-shaped. It should be straight, almost cylindrical. Well, that brings us to the end of this video. I hope at this point you have more information on the water cycle. And if you're in Mr. C's class, Don't forget about the activity that's associated with you.